Hey guys, Tacticaldoodle back with part 2 on the holiday gift giving series. This one I'm focusing on guns. This will probably be the last one. I want to keep it kind of short too because it just gets old listening to all this all the time. So, starting with it, the same stuff from the last video still applies. You still want to buy something that's going to last. You want to buy something that'll ideally keep value. You want to get something functional. Since these are all firearms, they're all going to be pretty functional, different levels. Now, one thing to think about before you go into this, and this is kind of more meant for the parents, the people who have disposable incomes. It's really tough for young people and like girlfriends and wives and stuff to buy guns for each other. This is more of how you buy guns that you plan to hand down to your kids. So when you're doing it, you kind of want to have your normal defense stuff squared away. If you think about your family as being a tiny little nation, you want to have your defense budget squared away before you go blowing a bunch of money on old museum things and restoring old stuff. Because I can pretty much guarantee if you go looking around for old mill syrup crap from the 40s, 60s, 70s, even 80s sometimes, you're probably going to want to get some extra parts. Alright, so first one I love is the M1 Garand, or Garand if you've been reading the history books. Doesn't really matter, most people know it as the Garand. This is by far my favorite gun ever created. It's probably my favorite weapon, tool, battlefield implement ever made, and I love it. To me, it transcends just being a simple gun or an implement of war. This is art. This is something that, when you look at it, you just see the history at the time. This one was a private transfer example I got, and it was made in March of 1943. Most of the parts match. I think op rod spring, a couple of small things like that don't. You just look at it and you can kind of feel the aura of the time. It was made and born when the nation depended on it. And you can tell that even back then, they had so much riding on it, but they didn't sacrifice any quality. You can still see all the separate machining marks. You can see how they had to mill each one of these. This was not a simple operation to make an M1, but it was still something that they took pride in, and they had to do it as quick as possible, and the results, even 60, however many years later, they're just beautiful. Everything about this, I just love. I mean, it speaks to you. You pick up an M1, and it just has soul. It's alive. You shoot it and it just agrees with you. It's such a great, soft shooting, accurate gun when you get a good one. It's so hard to pass up. I would definitely recommend 1 or 2 of these to hand down to your kids. They will definitely fight over them if they're anything into firearms. These are getting more and more expensive. At the time I got this, I want to say I paid about $800, $900 for it. I did get a bunch of ammo, and as a side note, I would watch out when you're doing private transfers and getting hand loads and stuff from people. Generally, they'll tell you it's really good factory ammo, but it's not. It's jackass hand loads they did while they were watching The View, just kind of absentmindedly turning it, or even worse. You get some scary stuff in there. With this, I got some good stuff, which was, I want to say some Dutch or Danish or something, probably like 200 rounds of that. Then 120 rounds just randomly smattered in there that were wildly dangerous Turkish ones. I swear I was going to bend an op rod with them because it kicked like none other. So watch out for those, especially with Grands. They tend to be temperamental. There's so much Grand info out there. CMP forums have a lot of cool stuff on those. Those guys are cool. CMP is pretty much out of the really nice Garands. They had some great ones. The HRAs, Harrington and Richardson from Korean War. Those were awesome, and they are beautiful. They have a bit darker stock. They have black parkerization. They're just beautiful. If you look at the way it's just put together and all these, I mean, the milled trigger guard, it's just from another time. It's a time when kids were afraid to backtalk and hot dogs still had real meat in them. It was wonderful, everything about it. So if you can, start tracking down your Garands now, get them for your kids. They're going to become rare and rare over time. This wasn't the last of the, more traditional battle rifles we ever had. There is the M14, the M1A series. There's still new M1As being made. There's some awesome ones of those. I would love some of the newer ones they're coming out with, but it's kind of harder to find the true military ones. Word about M1 Garands, they're getting a little more expensive over time. You'll find, especially with panic buying and all that, especially with the recent importation that was blocked for them. This is actually one of the older ones that you can see. I'll cut in the clips. You can see the importation marks up here. It's just kind of life as, someone who doesn't want to blow $2,000 on a Garand. You get to accept something that's kind of used. So this one does have all matching wood, not matching wood, but matching hardware. A lot of the nice touches, the bolt matches, parts match. Stock is still probably some Korean era, Arsenal refab. You take what you can get, but to me it's still my favorite gun. I hit with it. It's just awesome. There's something to be said about something so classically done. Along that same vein, I would look into getting old wheel guns. I personally love Webley Mark IVs and 45s. Make sure you get a good caliber. There's a lot of old stuff out there that shoots some funky cartridges that you may not be able or willing to hand load in the future. think ahead. Do something that's normal, something easy. This one is a hand-me-down that I got. This is in 38 special. Unfortunately, it's not 357. That's too bad. It's still awesome, hand-machined, matching numbers. You can just tell it has that, you know, old typewriter font where they stamp everything in. Just beautiful. These are guns that you have forever and ever. Their value increases with age. All right, if you've ever watched this or this, then you're no stranger to the Walther PPK. It's the prototypical spy gun. It's the thing we all associate with high class and 60s espionage and Cold War subterfuge. It may not have the most stopping power since it doesn't come in any caliber all that big. I think the max is 380, that's what this one is. It's still classic. There's something about it that it's a timeless design, it's been around for so long, it's iconic. When you're carrying this, you're aware of it. It is total steel. As you can tell in this one, this is the old stainless model through and through. This is one that I lusted after when I was a kid. We'd go out to the movies and Dad would be packing this. I'd be like, oh man, I can't wait till I can take that PPK out on the town. Now it's one of my go-to guns. A lot of you guys have been surprised in the past when we show up at in-person things or you catch us out in the wild. You always gear check us expecting some bizarro Mark 23 with laser designator and IR lamp and all this, you know, bizarro spec ops crap. I don't carry that. I mean, sometimes nothing will go as high as a PPQ or something a little bit bigger and printy. But for me, I'm not as big. I can't like hide it under a giant Hawaiian print t-shirt. So I can really only get away with stuff that I can hide in my waistband. To me, that's a PPK. I never feel at a loss with it. This is the 380. It's old, it's heavy, it may be underpowered by today's standards, but I don't really plan on getting in any gunfights anytime soon, so it's mostly ornamental. I carry this because I like it. It's just that second kind of cool, and it's a family heirloom. This is something I've had forever and I'll probably keep and hand down to my kids. If you look, this is the old one. It does have the old-fashioned beaver tail. It doesn't really come out that far. The newer ones do, so I think it may be a little bit safer on the hand webbing there, but it doesn't really do much for me. I've gotten mine cut up by this a couple times. It does, you know, kick kind of nastily, but it is what it is. It's a classic, and I still love it after all these years. Awesome, awesome heirloom. They do have a 222 coming out, so that's kind of cool. I don't know. I haven't seen it in person yet, so who knows. So in doing this, let's say you're just setting up a defense budget and you want to have some pistols that actually work as home defense handguns. That's awesome. You can also double them up and make sure it's some heirloom quality. I'm not saying Glocks aren't heirloomish or PPQs aren't, but there's something about something that's all metal, all wood, you know, just has that old world feel to it. There are a few guns that still do that today. Stuff like the Sig P210, you're never going to be able to afford it. I mean, good luck finding one to begin with. But the 1911 is the American equivalent. It is fantastically awesome. It's something that everyone pretty much owns at one time or another if you're into guns. This one is my personal one. This is a Taurus PT 1911 aluminum frame back when they made that. This is actually a gun that Nothing Fancy's told me to sell numerous times. He's told me to sell it and get something, you know, more high-end, something just super nice. And I've continuously rebuffed it. I'm always tempted by, you know, just selling it, getting a couple hundred out of it and, you know, moving up, but there's nothing that can really replace the amount of time we put into this. This is something that if you look back in his videos, you'll notice we did the Duracoat project on. This is one of our first pieces we did. We disassembled it, sanded it. Lots of time just sitting around, you know, BSing in the shop, spraying it down. I screwed it up one time, had to re-scrape it. It sucked at the time, but it's a memory. So this thing is definitely an heirloom gun to me. It may not be the most advanced 1911, but it's a 1911. Notice I didn't go with a rail or anything. I kind of went with something more timeless. It's just a classic model. There's something about having a 1911 that kind of puts you into the gun club. It's classic. It's American, it has a great trigger pull. Hard to go wrong with so many ones these days. There are awesome GI models all over the place. They all do their job. They're great. I would advise get some 10-round mags for it. Really, really kicks it up a notch just when you're out plinking with it. I mean, it's nice. It's still single stack 45, but there are a lot of other guns that up until the last couple years were pretty cutting edge, and they still used it, kind of like the P220. Last up on my short list is a Sig P226 or P226 or anything like me. That's kind of how I learned it. This thing is just as awesome as the rest of these. All of them are hand machined, hand milled. This just has that Swiss watch precision that they haven't let go of completely. You can still see some changes they've done. This one is one of the earlier examples. This one was made in Germany. We had this when I was a kid back in the 90s. This was just awesome. I grew up looking up to this gun, the PPK, all these, you know, small ones that at the time were, that was all we had. You know, we had two pistols growing up, and those were our home defense ones. Those were our go-tos. This is something I'll cherish forever. This is just all around an awesome pistol. There's a reason the Seal's been using it for years and years. This is just a full frame 26. I also love the 228s. Those are fantastic. I would probably even go personally with the 228 just because I like the form factor so much and it's easier to conceal. It's still a pretty big gun as far as they all go, but it's really hard to beat some, and especially if you could find an old 226 that says something like made in West Germany. Saw one of those ones and it was insanely cool. Just, there's something cool about it being from a country that no longer exists and having that same amount of quality. Hard to find, very rare, probably will increase in value if anyone else is nerdy as me for that kind of stuff. I don't know. So those are just some short ideas of stuff that I like. There's all kinds of other stuff. Again, if you want cheap, go for a shotgun. Go for something 22 quality heirloom. You know, get something like a Ruger Mark II, Mark IV, I think they're all the way up to now. You know, old pump guns, Ithaca 37s, hard to find, still awesome. Mossbergs, anything old will do. Old Brownings, there's just so much out there that's awesome and definitely heirloom quality. The main thing is that you actually use it though. Take it out with your kids, show them how to use it responsibly, teach them the sobering reality of being a gun owner, teach them what it is to have that kind of responsibility, make sure they protect those rights. That's the important thing. If you don't use it, if it just sits in a safe for all these years, they come into it and then it ends up on Gun Trader when they give it to some, you know, pawn shop broker because they have no idea what to do with it. It should be a part of your life. It should be something you do. It doesn't have to be the only thing you do, but it should be a part of just your family things. Hey, let's go out and shoot. Let's go practice. Let's go have some safe fun with it. Anyways, that's my 2 cents. Doodle out. There's not going to be a B-roll on this one because